Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn, and on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us so that we can learn as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on all the traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our special guest is Shaun Walsh. He's the owner of Perform Partners, where he provides enterprise cloud transformation services. So, Shaun, welcome to the show today. And I want to start off by asking a question that I always love asking, and it is this: if you were somehow able to go back and start over in your business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Firstly, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, man.
It's good to be here. If I could go back in time, what would I do? And that'd be an interesting point in time. So, Perform Partners has been running, it'd be 8 years old this year, which is kind of the same age as my youngest kid. So, I get to
Wow.
relive that again, which I'm leaning more towards. But to build the business again from scratch and even, carry some of these learnings forward into whatever comes next, I would start with sales first. I would really work on nailing what a good pitch is and building out the pipeline and getting great at that.
Mm,
And I'll say that because Perform Partners is genuinely a fantastic delivery company. So we can land in big customers, we can get the job done, we can make an impact, we get the results. And it doesn't matter if you're world leading at that. Without having a recurring pipeline and being able to do that again and again and putting a good proportion of effort within that, it doesn't matter if you're the best in the world. If you can't
mm.
sell it and you can't replicate it, then you've not got a business.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. Is there any specific things that you've learned to make that process easier? Because I know whether people are just starting off or people have been in business for a long time, but they're adding in a new service, there
Mhm.
is always that you could say transition phase or product fit or market fit evaluation phase. What's something that you've learned in that has made that stand out and a bit easier for you?
I'd say don't expect a silver bullet. So,
Mm,
bolting on a system, um, still 8 years in, there's there's less there's less optimism there, thinking, well, we're going to do this and it's going to work and that's going to solve everything, and some of that's refined down from the lived experience, but kind of reframing that to make you more resilient within it. You have, I'd say, take a mindset of being able to try and then also balance that against don't knee jerk to something else. If you're going to try, give a good bedding in period, whether it's increasing your outreach, putting in a new system, and doing some A/B testing on your leads, talking to people. It's an increasingly over 8 years. The market's increasingly saturated. I think it's genuinely to say if you're unique, then if you're unique, you're probably converting a pipeline anyway. But again, you've got to be able to shout about it. So be resilient in the face of it. Anybody that I speak to at Perform size or startup size, or even companies, um, 5 times, 10 times bigger than Perform in revenue and people size, it's the similar challenges, bringing
mm.
in that pipeline, connecting with people, trying to keep your people motivated and engaged, and being resilient enough not to burn yourself out and take it personal if things aren't coming off. So, it's a whole mix. It doesn't feel like a binary choice to me. There's many, many
Mm.
factors that make it up, but probably the galvanizing factor is the human one. Look after your
Yeah.
people, listen, lean into it and support them, put some scaffolding around it.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That's a really balanced answer as well. It's not just like, oh, it's just one thing. It's a combination of stuff, which I think is really good. Which, as speaking along that process, when you look at scaling and where you guys have grown, what's been the hardest part of growing and scaling, but without becoming salesy or spammy in the process?
Yeah, I mean we've struggled with becoming salesy, and I think that's been a strength because we've stayed human, we've stayed candid and connected, and we've organically grown. And that's probably an
Mm,
overused term, but what I mean by that is we've picked up new work on the quality of our existing work. But going back to my first answer, that's only scalable so far. Really, you've got to be able to balance that with you've got to do the day job. You've got to get the results. You've got to do the right things by the customer. The quality bar needs to be maintained. That's almost, the this is your height to ride, so you can do the rest of it.
mm,
And it's been hard for us transitioning from a delivery organization, essentially set up by project managers initially, into understanding it's a different dynamic and it's a different way of doing business, being sales orientated. And we've been very mindful we don't want to tip too far over, which reduces some of the ingredients to the initial success, but also mindful of it needs a bit of a mix if you're going to keep
mm,
growing, if you want to keep adding value, if you want to keep
yeah.
money coming through the door to look after people, to service the customers. I'm fond of the term, I've come over it more recently, of dynamic balance, with more of a nod to probably some of my earlier thinking that if I'm balanced, I'm done. But I'm more open to, because the environment's constantly shifting at such an increased rate as well, with the new technologies coming in, or some of the more macro factors with government and geopolitics, being aware that you need to constantly rebalance and be mindful of that and expecting it, and almost loosening the grip on the fantasy of, well, I've done this now and things will be okay. And if it's not okay, then we're in turmoil. My lived reality is there's constant change. We are in flux. Do your best to balance it as you go, and
Mm,
don't tie the business to your core identity. And that's been a key learning over 8 years. As the business has been doing well, I felt I've been doing well, and that's lifted me. And as the business has hit some turbulence or not doing so well, personally, that's dragged me down as well.
mm,
So seeing the business as its own living, breathing entity, and not attributing your own personal value to it,
mm,
has been important for me to learn how to ride that wave.
mm. Yeah, that's one of the most sound answers I've ever got from someone. I think that's a really, really wise answer that you gave. Yeah, that's amazing. I think, and I think it's easy for owners to tie their own person to the business because you put so much blood, sweat, and tears
Yeah,
into it,
man.
you know?
And the start off, it is personal. It's
Yeah,
like for many, many years, and probably even now, actually, it's felt like another child.
yeah,
You pushing effort into it. You want to see it grow. You're worried that it's going to get, somebody's going to damage it. Then you bring these other people in and they're helping to nurture it. But it becomes a living thing all in itself. And like
yeah.
kids, you've got to give it space to breathe and know
Yeah.
where to support it, know when to lean in, and accept you. We're unlikely to get it right. I think sometimes in business and parenting, it's just about getting it less wrong.
Yeah. That's so true, man. That's really, really true. Well, talking about the element where you said you're trying to you don't want to be sales in what you're doing, but you kind of want to have that dynamic balance in there. What's one thing that you've changed in how you build relationships to make that selling process feel easier?
Yeah, and I'll be curious maybe from your listeners and yourself. It may be a Yorkshire thing. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am from Yorkshire, the north of England. We've been for many years, probably for several years, we've been very humble in what we've delivered, and we have delivered some great things in one of the largest cloud transformations in Europe. We work with big customers doing big things, but it's normal to us. We started the company with the ethos that, well, you should be, the quality bar is high. You should be delivering what you say you're going to deliver.
Mm,
You should be able to get these things done. And for many years we didn't shout about it. But not only did we didn't shout about it, we didn't ask where we'd had successful engagements for referrals or testimonies or for somebody to say, to a CTO, could you, do you know any of your peers that may be having these problems? We just kind of
Yeah.
put our heads down, delivered what we needed to do, and then cracked on. And I think this is what I mean by taking a more sales-minded approach. And some people are, put off by sales, I think. And that's been our early experience. But it's the keystone of a business. If you can't sell,
Yeah.
you have no business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is striking that balance between it. But as you said, at the end of the day, you have to sell. You've got to bring in that revenue around things. One of the other questions I'd love to ask, and I'd be really curious because the way you're communicating, I bet you've got a good answer to this. um, so we as business owners, we all go through stuff, and oftentimes it can be very isolating. We think we're the only ones that are going through issues, or we're the only one that has faced this challenge, or it must just be me, right? And I like to normalize that a bit more, where it's like it's not. We all face these issues. So, having said that, what's the number one biggest challenge that you faced in your business so far, and what's the lesson that you learned from that?
Well, I think we touched on it earlier. It's unconsciously tying your personal identity and self-worth to the success of the business. The
Mm,
risk with that is when things inevitably don't go well or aren't going as well as you suspect, and that is so subjective. My well could be different to your well, could be different to, you know, hundreds of listeners' measure of, well, I'm actually doing okay in this. Is it if you don't bring that into mind, it uses up so much psychological energy. And what I mean by that is really what we channel our focus on. It
mm,
can become even more isolating because there's some hidden shame within there that, well, I don't want to talk about how hard it is. I
yeah.
don't want to tell these people where I've genuine, well, it is a fantasy. Well, they're doing so great. Why am I finding it so hard? And then the risk there is that becomes, I think, an unconscious message of, well, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. There's actually something wrong with me.
Mm,
And my lived experience of that is it was leading to burnout and disengagement, and it was taking the joy and the
mm,
creativity out of the business.
yeah.
So what's been important there is, well, one, identifying it and giving some space for recovery, and then connecting with people and talking to people. I speak to people that have sold their businesses, multimillionaires, and they still have the same problems and they still carry a sense of even self-doubt and fear that they
Mm,
can't do it. So
mm,
I think loosen the fantasy that all people are doing better in business than you. Don't
mm,
believe a lot of the stuff pushed out on Insta and LinkedIn or anywhere else as the lived
yeah.
reality. I think
Yeah.
it's hard and it's hard for a reason. We're creating something often out of nothing and we carry a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, just another great answer. I really hope people are listening to what you're saying behind this because I think it's very true. And I think we all deal with that. Yeah, man. I can tell you've done a lot of work on yourself.
Well, when I started Perform about a year later, I started studying psychotherapy.
Yeah.
I'm a qualified psychotherapist, and how that's evolved now is it's a double-edged sword in all honesty, because I think it's sometimes harder to be aware and not dull the feel of it.
Mm,
So I'm very aware on the other side of it what works for me to be self-regulated. So I
hmm.
can be more in balance, so I can be more present with my kids. And that's been
Yeah,
a
man.
big thing for me. I've looked back years past and they seem to have leapt from being 5 to almost 8 all of a sudden. I'm like, where's that time gone? And it
Yeah.
always seems to be
Yeah.
getting faster. And there was real, I felt grief in that I wouldn't get that time back, that I'd spent so much time
Mm,
working on client stuff or
yeah.
trying to get away from some of the pain in the business by pursuing endurance events and taking me out of the house most of the weekends. But I'm lucky that there's a lot of support around me. I've got a great partner that can point things out. like
Mm,
that and hold the space. And I'm really just trying to dial into enjoying the moments, which ironically
yeah.
is giving me more energy and clearer focus in the business.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I love that. I love that. So yeah, so many more people need to learn those things for sure. So definitely a journey that I've been on, and I don't think it's an ending journey. It's always an evolution of understanding. But man, that's amazing, Shaun. Well, for people that are looking to get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what's the best place for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. I actively stay off any other social media because again, on the other side of the dysregulation for me, I can I can easily fall into a social media rabbit hole and lose hours. So yeah, give me a shout on LinkedIn. There'll be an email address hanging about on there. And if you're in the Yorkshire or Manchester or London area, then I do circle around those places now and again.
All right, amazing, amazing. Well, I definitely recommend everyone check Shaun out on LinkedIn. And even if it's just to say, hey, man, I got a lot out of the podcast today, let Shaun know that for sure. So, Shaun, thank you so much for being on the show. A lot of great, real practical wisdom in your answers today. I really appreciate that. So, thank you so much for being on. And as a reminder for everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn, have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.